Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan Lugo. Thanks so much for tuning in here on Wednesday, May 10th. Right now, we're talking Super Bowl odds for the Jacksonville Jaguars. This week has been dominated by schedule release talk. Schedule releases Thursday at 8 p.m. But again, right now, we're talking about the Jaguars Super Bowl odds. Always interesting looking at Super Bowl odds. Usually the Jaguars are not anywhere in the picture when you're talking about the Super Bowl. You usually don't really need to talk about them when you're talking about the Super Bowl. Usually on the other end of the spectrum, talking about could they get the number one overall pick in the NFL draft, which they did 2 years in a row in 2021 and 2022. But now things have changed. They've gotten back to relevance once again, thanks in large part to Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence. And so the Jaguars, looking at their Super Bowl odds, they have the 10th best odds pretty much anywhere you look at plus 2,500 according to FanDuel Sportsbook. So being in the top 10 in Super Bowl odds, it's quite the glow up for your Jacksonville Jaguars. And look, we know they play in a division where they could potentially face 3 rookie quarterbacks this year. You know, C.J. Stroud in Houston, Will Levis in Tennessee, Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis. That can always help. If you're going up against rookie quarterbacks a bunch throughout your schedule, that can help you win football games. Rookie quarterbacks generally struggle to get the job done. The Jaguars, they also play the NFC South. That's their NFC division they're playing this year, and that's a division. It's in a transition period right now, right? You have no Tom Brady for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Saints, they're holding on like a hair in a biscuit, trying to keep being competitive, keep trying to compete for the playoffs. They brought in Derek Carr this year. The Panthers, they're in their first year with Frank Reich and Bryce Young. And then the Falcons, they have a lot of offensive talent, but they've got Desmond Ridder at quarterback. Not one of the more imposing divisions on paper around the league. Then you add in the fact that the Jaguars, they host the Chiefs, 49ers, Bengals, and Ravens at home, and then they take on the Bills in London. So their top 5 opponents on their schedule are all going to either be at home or in the Jaguars' home away from home in London. So I think that is beneficial for the Jaguars, right? You're not going to have to go to Arrowhead to play the Chiefs. You're not going to have to go out to San Francisco to take on the 49ers or Cincinnati or Baltimore or Buffalo. I think that's huge for the Jaguars. So it's easy to predict the Jaguars when you're looking at their division, looking at the NFC teams they play, looking at the tougher opponents that they have on their schedule. Easy to predict them to win their division and host a home playoff game in 2023. Obviously a long way to go to get to that point, but on paper, again, not difficult to see the Jaguars winning the AFC South, hosting a home playoff game. So if they have one of the easiest paths to a division title, shouldn't they be higher on the list than 10th in terms of Super Bowl odds? I do think they should be higher than 10th in Super Bowl odds. But the question is, how much higher? I'm not sure how much higher exactly. Because to get there, to get to the Super Bowl, you have to get through the playoffs, and they would likely have to take out at least 2 of the top 3 teams in the vaunted AFC right now, Chiefs, Bills, and Bengals. Not going to be easy to do in the playoffs, right? These are teams that have more playoff experience than the Jaguars. They're teams that are talented, teams that added a lot of talent this offseason, well coached. Those are going to be tough roadblocks for the Jaguars to hurdle, no question about it. But when you look at this top 10, I think the Jaguars should easily be ahead of the Jets. Aaron Rodgers, yes, he's a New York Jet now, but he hasn't been able to get to the Super Bowl in a much weaker conference in the NFC in quite some time. Now that he's in New York, and in a much more difficult conference, he's going to be able to take that next step. I'm not convinced, right? You've also got Dallas, Detroit, and Baltimore ahead of the Jaguars. I don't think the Ravens or the Cowboys are as good as the Jaguars, straight up. We saw the Jaguars beat both teams. They were close games, no question about it. But I think when you look at the makeup of quarterback position, head coach, and total team talent and the rest of the coaching around the head coach, I would take the Jaguars over the Ravens, and I would take the Jaguars over the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Detroit, it's an interesting one. I do think that Detroit obviously handed it to the Jaguars last year. I think they should be in the same tier as the Jaguars. I like a lot of what they did this offseason and what they've done since Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have been there. But Jared Goff at quarterback, not quite as enticing as Lamar Jackson or a Dak Prescott. Certainly not as exciting as Trevor Lawrence, the Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback. And speaking of Trevor Lawrence, it looks like he's about to take the league by storm in 2023. Had a red-hot finish to the 2022 campaign in the regular season and in the playoffs. We all know how successful Doug Peterson has been winning games in the playoffs. So again, for me, I do think the Jaguars should be higher than 10th in terms of Super Bowl odds. I'd probably put them at 6th or 7th if I was making the odds. I will say, though, as much as we like this Jaguars football team, as much talent as there is on the team, as much optimism as there is about Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence, and the rest of these offensive weapons, I still think on the defensive side of the ball, they need a little bit of help. I think they are expecting some positive regression, some development from some of their younger players on that side of the ball, some adjustments to how they were scheming from 2022 to 2023, but I still think you need another nickel and another edge defender on this roster if you really want to compete with the top teams at the end of the year. That's just how I see it. Love to know what you guys think. Where would you place the Jaguars if you were making these Super Bowl odds? Love to know. Hit me up on Twitter at Jordan DeLugo. You can also follow Generation Jaguar at Generation Jag. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Also drop a comment in the comment section. If you are on your podcast platform of choice, please subscribe and review. Have a good one, Duval.